Your dad still won't let a Jiffy Lube touch his car, and deep down, you know exactly why that bugs you more than it should. Here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud. There's a whole generation of guys, and it really is mostly guys, who will spend 90 minutes on a Saturday lying on a piece of cardboard in their driveway, wrestling with an oil filter that's stuck on too tight, just to save maybe $12 compared to a quick lube place. $12. That's less than what most people spend on lunch.
And yet they'll do it every single time, rain or shine, bad back or not, because something in their head tells them this is what a man does. This is what a responsible adult does. And if you try to explain to them that their time is worth more than $12 an hour, they will look at you like you just told them the sky is purple. Now, here's a stat that actually stopped me in my tracks when I first heard it. Studies on car maintenance habits have found that fewer than 10% of Americans under 35 have ever changed their own oil.
Under 10%. Compare that to boomers, where the number sits somewhere around 50 to 60%, depending on which survey you look at. That's not a small gap. That's the difference between a country road and a 6-lane highway. An entire skill, one that used to be as basic as knowing how to boil water, has almost vanished in 2 generations. And it didn't vanish because it got harder. Cars are actually easier to work on in some ways now, with better instructions online, better tools, better everything. It vanished because the psychology around it changed completely. So let's actually get into why boomers hang on to this ritual so hard. Because it's not really about the oil. It was never about the oil. Think about when these guys were coming up. A lot of boomers learned car maintenance from their fathers, who learned it during or right after World War II, a time when you fixed things because you had to, not because you wanted a hobby. Cars broke down constantly back then. Parts were expensive or hard to find.
Mechanics weren't always trustworthy. And honestly, taking your car to a shop and getting ripped off was a real fear, not a joke people made online. So learning to do it yourself wasn't some quirky personality trait. It was survival. It was how you made sure your family had a working car to get to work in. And here's where it gets interesting psychologically. When you learn a skill out of necessity during a formative period of your life, that skill doesn't just sit there as information. It becomes tied to your identity.
It becomes proof that you can take care of yourself and the people who depend on you. So changing the oil isn't just changing the oil. It's a small, repeated ritual that says, I am still capable. I am still the guy who handles things. I don't need anybody's help. That last part is huge, by the way. Independence isn't just a value for a lot of boomers. It's basically a religion. They grew up in a culture that hammered self-reliance into everything, from cowboy movies to Boy Scouts to their own parents telling them to pull themselves up and figure it out. Needing help was treated like a character flaw.
So when a boomer changes his own oil instead of paying someone else to do it, on some level he's reassuring himself that he hasn't become the kind of person who needs help with basic things. And getting older is already scary enough when it comes to that fear. Your body starts failing you, your memory gets shakier, people start talking to you slower like you might not understand them. In that context, being able to still crawl under a car and get dirty and fix something with your own 2 hands is not a chore.
It's proof of life. It's proof that you're not done yet. There's also a trust thing going on that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of boomers came up during decades where mechanics genuinely did have a bad reputation for upselling people, especially women and older folks, into repairs they didn't need. That reputation stuck. So even now, when quick lube places are pretty standardized and mostly honest, there's still this lingering suspicion. If I do it myself, nobody can lie to me about what my car needs.
Nobody can tell me my filter is corroded when it's fine. Nobody can pad the bill. That mistrust isn't paranoia exactly. It's a learned response from decades of watching friends and neighbors get taken advantage of. And once that kind of belief gets baked into how you see the world, it doesn't just go away because Yelp reviews exist now. Let's talk money for a second, because people love to say boomers do this just to save cash. And honestly, that explanation is way too simple.
Sure, saving money matters, especially for people on fixed incomes after retirement.
But if it was purely about money, you'd see the same behavior spike in every generation that's ever been broke. And you don't. Broke 25-year-olds today are way more likely to just put off the oil change entirely, or ask a friend, or watch one YouTube video and still end up paying someone, than they are to actually learn the skill themselves. So money is part of it, but it's not the engine driving the behavior. Pun fully intended.
The real driver is what the money represents. Spending money on something you're capable of doing yourself can feel, to this generation, like admitting defeat. Like admitting you've gotten soft or lazy, or that you've let convenience replace competence. And competence, for a lot of these guys, is basically their whole personality. There's a generational thing here, too, that's worth sitting with. Boomers grew up in an economy where a single income could support a family.
Where a car could realistically last you 15 or 20 years if you took care of it. And where taking care of your stuff was just what you did, because replacing it wasn't easy. Compare that to now, where cars are leased more than owned, where a lot of younger people don't even expect to keep a car more than 5 years, and where convenience culture has basically trained everyone to outsource anything that takes more than 20 minutes. It's not that younger generations are lazy. That's an unfair and honestly kind of lazy explanation itself.
It's that the entire relationship between people and their possessions changed. When you don't expect to own something for long, you don't feel the same pull to learn how to maintain it. But boomers came up in a world of ownership, not access. And that mental model doesn't just disappear because the economy shifted underneath them. Here's something that hits a little different once you notice it. For a lot of boomers, especially men,
the garage or the driveway became one of the few places where they got to just be alone with their thoughts, without anyone needing anything from them. No wife asking about dinner, no kids needing a ride, no boss calling. Just you, a wrench, and an engine that either works right or doesn't, with clear feedback either way. There's something almost meditative about that. In a world that constantly demands your attention and gives you vague, confusing feedback about whether you're doing life right, an oil change gives you something rare.
A clear task with a clear beginning and a clear end. You know exactly when you're done. You know exactly if you did it right. Life rarely gives people that kind of clarity, and a lot of boomers found it, almost by accident, in their driveway on a Saturday morning. And can we talk about the identity piece one more time? Because I think it's actually the biggest piece. A lot of boomer men were raised believing that being useful was the same thing as being valuable. Not being kind, not being wise, not being present. Being useful. Can you fix things? Can you provide? Can you handle a problem without complaining about it? That belief system is everywhere in how that generation was raised, and it doesn't retire just because they did. So when a boomer changes his own oil, on some level, even if he'd never say this out loud, he's proving to himself that he still matters in the way he was taught mattering works, that he's still needed, still capable, still the guy who can be counted on. Take that ritual away from him, tell him just pay someone, it's easier, and you're not just taking away a task.
You're quietly taking away a small piece of how he proves his own worth to himself. That's why arguments about this rarely work using logic. You can show a boomer the math, $12 saved for 90 minutes of his time and a sore back, and he'll nod and still do it his way next time. Because the argument was never about the math. It's about what the ritual gives him that no calculation can replace. So the next time you see your dad or your uncle, or some 68-year-old guy at the auto parts store buying a filter and a jug of 5-quart oil, and some part of you wants to roll your eyes and tell him to just go pay for it, remember what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at stubbornness. You're looking at a man quietly proving to himself, one oil change at a time, that he's still here, still capable, and still worth something in a world that keeps trying to convince him otherwise. If this video hit a little too close to home, do me a favor and buy me a coffee through the link in the description. It genuinely helps keep this channel running, and every bit of support means more than you know.